Hello everyone, a very warm welcome to all of you to the Hindu news analysis of 17th November 2020. Today we'll discuss important articles and the editorial of Hindu newspaper. So let's quickly start with our very first article. Judge recuses himself from Jagan's case. This is the very first article you can find in the front page, and this article is very much important in your GS2 of mains as well as पॉलिटी पर्सपेक्टिव इन योर प्रीलिम्स. सो पॉलिटी एंड गवर्नेंस का ये एक भाग है जहां पे सुप्रीम कोर्ट के और चीफ मिनिस्टर ऑफ आंध्र प्रदेश श्री जगनमोहन रेड्डी के बीच में जो चीजें चल रही है उसके बारे में एक और आर्टिकल है. द इंपॉर्टेंट पार्ट ऑफ दिस पर्टिकुलर आर्टिकल इज Justice UU Lalit of Supreme Court. He said that he doesn't want himself in the hearing about the writ petitions which were filed against the Andhra Pradesh government and its chief minister, because the petitioners are saying that Mr. Jagan Mohan Reddy has leveled false, vague and political allegations against the Supreme Court judge Mr. N.V. Ramana. So this is the allegations which these people are making, that the chief minister's allegations are false, vague and are politically motivated. So saying that few people has gone to Supreme Court and Mr. UU Lalit, the judge of Supreme Court, has refused to hear it in his bench and he wanted it to transfer the case into another bench. The judge withdrew from hearing the case, explained that he had as a lawyer represented the parties involved in the case. यानी कि जब ये जज साहब एक वकील के रूप में काम कर रहे थे तब उन्होंने जगनमोहन रेड्डी जी के कुछ केसेस और बाकी जो पार्टीज इन्वॉल्व है उनके कुछ केसेस को एज ए लॉयर उन्होंने आर्ग्यू किया था, एंड नाउ इट बिकम्स a conflict of interest. That is something which is very important even in your ethics. Conflict of interest. So citing conflict of interest, now he doesn't want to take part in this particular hearing, so he wanted it to be transferred into some other bench. And Justice Lalit was one of the few senior advocates directly elevated to Supreme Court judge in the entire history of the court. So in this context, I would like you all to read appointment of judges of Supreme Court. Appointment of Supreme Court judges. How are Supreme Court judges appointed and what is the process followed in their appointment? अगर आप अभी ये चीज जो रिवाइज करेंगे तो आपको और भी बढ़िया नॉलेज मिल जाएगा. So a eminent jurist or an advocate of having more than 10 years experience in a high court or Supreme Court can be elevated to the post of a judge if the collegium sees them as fit to be appointed as a judge. Now the bench has recorded a short order requesting the Chief Justice of India to list the case before an appropriate bench. यहाँ पे appropriate क्यों कहा गया है? क्योंकि ये जो बेंच है इस बेंच में एक ऐसा जज है जो पहले ऑलरेडी यहाँ पे पार्टीज जो इन्वॉल्व है उनके लिए लॉयर के रूप में काम किए थे, एंड देयर इज एलिगेशंस अगेंस्ट द सुप्रीम कोर्ट सीनियर मोस्ट जज मिस्टर और जज एनवी रमना. सो इट इज ओनली टू बी kept in some other bench which has another senior most judge. Now already we have discussed almost everything related to the background of this particular article, but once again we will see quickly. So Mr. Jagan Mohan Reddy addressed the Chief Justice of India against the judges and the subsequent revelation of its contents in a press conference. पहले आंध्र प्रदेश के चीफ मिनिस्टर मिस्टर जगन मोहन रेड्डी ने एक पत्र लिखा था चीफ जस्टिस ऑफ इंडिया को against the judges and later made this particular letter revealed into the public in a press conference. Later the attorney general श्री के वेणुगोपाल उन्होंने क्या किया? He did not give the statutory consent. He did not give the statutory consent to initiate a contempt of court proceedings against the chief minister. So against the chief minister they did not give a contempt of court proceedings. And Attorney General has said that the CJI is seized of the matter, which means the Chief Justice of India knows everything related to the matter and he will take an appropriate decision. So now all these parties who have already initiated the case or the proceedings, now they alleged that it is completely with a malified intention and that's why it has not to be immediately brought into consideration and it has to be discussed upon. And the Supreme Court advocate in his contempt plea to Mr. Venugopal claimed that the decision of a bench led by Justice Ramana on September 16 directed expeditious completion of pending criminal cases against the politicians, and because of this it is rumored that the chief minister has written a letter. And another petition in person accused the chief minister of misusing his official post by criticizing the judiciary. Another petition was filed by an NGO which is called as Anti Corruption Council of Indian Trust. और एक और पिटिशन भी आई थी जहां पे उस पिटिशन में लॉयर ने ये कहा था कि एन ऑर्डर इश्यू करने के लिए उन्होंने रिक्वेस्ट किया था ताकि जो चीफ मिनिस्टर है उनको ऐसा पब्लिक स्टेटमेंट्स नहीं देना चाहिए एंड देयर शुड नॉट बी एनी प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंसेस और एनी अदर सच प्रैक्टिसेस अगेंस्ट द जुडिशियरी. द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन डज नॉट अलाउ डिलिबरेट अटेम्प्ट्स टू पब्लिकली एम्ब्रेस द जुडिशियरी, यानी कि चाहते हुए intentionally if you want to embarrass the judiciary, constitution prohibits you from doing so. The discussions can go wild in media within hours or days and it affects the image of the judiciary. If a chief minister of a state is accusing against the judiciary, it has a very important significance in terms of qualitative and quantitative measures. And when the stake is the confidence that courts inspire the public in a democracy, इसका मतलब क्या है? So what does this mean? इसका मतलब ये है कि सारे लोग हमारे देश में कोर्ट पे काफी ज्यादा भरोसा रखते हैं एंड यू आर ऑलरेडी ट्राइंग टू मेक ए लॉट ऑफ एलिगेशंस अगेंस्ट द कोर्ट्स and that too in a public domain, then what happens? People might lose the confidence in the courts. So that's why such issues should not be made in media. There are other platforms such as parliament and state legislature which are empowered to initiate proceedings against the judges and not the press conferences where these are to be discussed and addressed, and you should not directly come to the press is what the petitioners are saying. And the petition also said that the constitutional immunity granted to the judiciary is to allow them to function fearlessly. कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन या हमारा संविधान में ऐसा प्रोविजंस दिया गया था ताकि जुडिशरी जो है वो बिल्कुल फियरलेसली काम करे और उस पर कोई भी दूसरों का असर नहीं पड़े. लेकिन यहाँ पे क्या हो रहा है, जब एग्जीक्यूटिव इज ट्राइंग टू मैनिपुलेट जुडिशरी बाय अटैकिंग जुडिशरी, देन it is a very big problem for the entire judiciary of the country. Then the next article which we are going to discuss is an editorial which is continuation of yesterday's RCEP, जो कल हम लोगों ने रीजनल कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव इकोनॉमिक पार्टनरशिप के बारे में ऑलरेडी पढ़ चुके हैं. उसके एनालिसिस में एक एडिटोरियल है, काफी इंपॉर्टेंट एडिटोरियल है. ये भी आपका GS2 के इंटरनेशनल रिलेशंस में इंडिया एंड इट्स नाइबरहुड, इस टॉपिक में काफी ज्यादा आपको इससे वेटेज मिलेगी. सो दैट्स व्हाई इट इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट इन योर GS2 पर्सपेक्टिव. सो yesterday the regional comprehensive economic partnership was signed into existence by the countries led by China, Japan, South Korea, Australia, New Zealand and the 10 ASEAN grouping countries. And because of this, the largest trading blocks of the world was created. One of the largest trading blocks of the world was created because of this RCEP. And noticeable by its absence was India. सारे लोग अपने आंख कहाँ पे, अपने नजर कहाँ पे डालते थे? भारत में। भाई इंडिया इज नॉट प्रेजेंट इन दिस RCEP because India decided last November to exit this grouping. India decided not to join this particular regional grouping. India had justified its decision by protecting its economy from bourgeois trade deficits, with a majority of RCEP members had cited the group's refusal to accede to its requests on safeguard as a deal breaker. अब इसका मतलब क्या होता है दोस्तों? दिस इज समथिंग विच यू नीड टू अंडरस्टैंड. इंडिया जस्टिफाइड दैट इट वांट्स टू प्रोटेक्ट इट्स इकोनॉमी. So for India, protection of its own economy is also very important, and the 15 RCEP members refused to accept the request on safeguards. जो भी इंडिया demands for the safeguard of its own trade and commerce were put before RCEP, then those people did not comply with these demands, and those reasons were on the face of it justifiable at the time and were welcomed by industry, trade as well as farmers groups. यानी कि जब ये डिसीजन ली गई थी भारत के द्वारा, उस वक्त सारे अलग अलग सेक्टर्स के पीपल इसको एक्सेप्ट कर दिया था, इसको वेलकम कर दिया था, क्योंकि उस वक्त ये सही था. लेकिन 12 महीने के बाद, एक साल के बाद, द बिगेस्ट फैक्टर विच इज एक्टिंग टुडे इज COVID-19. In the wake of COVID-19, already there is a lot of decline in trade, and also there is a decline in economy. When there is a decline in trade as well as economy, now India's opting out appears far more debatable. यानी कि अब ये एक point of discussion बन गई है because of its economic rationale or the economic condition. Then with global trade and economy foundering on the shoals of COVID-19 pandemic, यानी कि पूरे दुनिया जो है वो अब COVID-19 की वजह से काफी ज्यादा प्रॉब्लम फेस कर रही है, एंड देर आर न्यू इन्फेक्शंस इन यूरोप as well as USA. Because of that, there are fresh restrictions being imposed in these countries, and the preeminence of East Asian and Pacific countries, including China, South Korea, Vietnam, Australia, and New Zealand, serving as a bulwark in containing the pandemic and re-energizing economic activity, can hardly be understated. इसका मतलब क्या है दोस्तों? एक तरफ वेस्टर्न कंट्रीज जो है वो ऑलरेडी सेकेंड लॉकडाउन की तरह जा रही है, बट मेनी ईस्ट एशियन एंड पैसिफिक कंट्रीज, रिमेंबर दिस, East Asian and Pacific countries, particularly China, South Korea, Vietnam, Australia, New Zealand. Remember, New Zealand is COVID free for the last many days. It has declared itself COVID free, and now these people, they are re-energizing their economic activity. They are recovering completely in terms of economic activity because already they are COVID free. They don't have much impact of COVID, and that's why they are completely focusing on economic activity. And this should not be understated, and this should not be undermined, and we should keep in our mind that these countries are doing aggressive economic activity. Added to this, heightened tariff uncertainty generated by डेडलॉक्ड ब्रेग्जिट नेगोशिएशंस. दूसरी तरह से हम लोगों को एक और प्रॉब्लम ये हुई है कि द ब्रेग्जिट नेगोशिएशंस वेयर द एंटायर ब्रिटेन एंड यूरोप, द ग्रेट ब्रिटेन wants to exit the European Union, and this is popularly termed as Brexit. Britain's exit is nothing but Brexit. But what are the policies which have to be followed for Brexit? That is still evident between Britain and EU, because India exports a lot of things to both Britain as well as European Union. And when there is a lot of problem in finalizing the deal between the European Union and the British, then India has missed a very vital opportunity where India could have signed separate deals with both the countries. If India can sign separate deals with both the countries, then it will be far more beneficiary for India, so that it can have trade separately with European Union as well as the Great Britain. Now, RCEP members account to almost 30% of the global GDP, and one third of world's population comes under RCEP. The signatory states were emphatic that the timing of the accord presents a unique opportunity to support their economic recovery. उनका जो economic recovery है, so all the RCEP signatories, all the 15 countries, now they are seeing it as a perfect timing and an opportunity to recover themselves, and they want an inclusive development and job creation because many countries are going towards recession. Now, what do you mean by recession? 2 quarters of economic downfall. अगर 2 continuous quarters में economic downfall है, then we say that the country is heading towards recession. If it continues with further downfall of the GDP and the growth rate for few more quarters, then we say that the country is in recession. So it starts with initially 2 quarters of a negative growth rate, and if it continues, then we say that the country is in recession. So the inclusive development and job creation along with regional supply chains. ये जो regional supply chains है, इसका मतलब क्या होता है? Now, within the region of, maybe we can say, Asia Pacific or Indo Pacific, if these people properly create their own supply chains, then that will benefit them even in the further days for upcoming trade and commerce. That is another important point which all the RCEP countries are focusing upon. Now, there is one more very interesting point here which you can observe is, among the ASEAN signatories, there were many countries which has relatively smaller economies like Vietnam and Philippines. These countries not only continue to have their share of disputes with Beijing, these countries have a lot of issues with China, but they also suffer significant trade imbalances. The trade imbalance, that is the balance of payments and trade deficit. The trade deficit is always towards China. That means all the other countries, they have a deficit and the surplus is towards China. So Chinese always have the trade surplus, but the countries which are doing trade with China have only, what do they have? Trade deficit. And all these things are with Asia's largest economy. Now, China is the Asia's largest economy, and these countries are having this balance of payments as well as trade deficit problems with the China. And other larger nations in the grouping have also chosen to bury. They have chosen to bury their geopolitical differences with China. Almost every country in the Pacific and the Indian Ocean has one or other issue with China, but all the ASEAN countries, all the 10 ASEAN countries and the other 4 countries, that is China, sorry, South Korea, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, these 14 countries have chosen to set aside their geopolitical differences with China, and they wanted completely to focus only on the trade agreement, that is RCEP. And this was collectively seen as a mutually benefit trading compact. This has to be seen as a mutually benefit trading compact because this will benefit their economies over the long term. They are assessing that this will benefit them long term, but what does this mean? If it is in long term benefit, then there may be short term troubles. There might be a lot of short term troubles, but they are seeing it in a long term perspective, so that's why they are focusing it in a long term perspective. And economic realism, what do you mean by this economic realism? The reality of today's economy is trumping or is overseeing the nationalist policy politics. Your country is important, your nationalist feeling is important, but as on today, you have to survive. If you have to survive, then you need to have money, which means you need to have more and more trade and commerce, and because of that these people have signed the new trade agreement. Then the summary of the final agreement shows that the pact covers and attempts to address the issues that India had flagged during the rules of origin. जितने भी चीजें भारत के द्वारा हाईलाइट की गई है, the points which were initially highlighted by India, now all those points were covered in this particular agreement. But when India was negotiating the deal, then there were no such provisions to relax or to accept the demands of India. But now there are lot of such provisions which were provisionally accepted in this particular final agreement. And the issues include the rules of origin, then the trade in services, movement of persons, and remedies as well as safeguards. अगर कोई भी एक देश को इस आरसीईपी की वजह से कोई प्रॉब्लम हो रही है, then how to safeguard the interests and what are the remedies we have to follow, and all the crucial things were now mentioned in the final draft agreement. Acknowledging India's heft, economic heft and value. So, what does this mean? They are accepting the India's economic might and value as a market. How India is important for each and every country as a market. The RCEP members have not only left the door open, India should also reconsider its stance, but also RCEP has waived a 18-month cooling period for interested applicants. पहले क्या होता था? There was an 18-month cooling period. In this 18 months, the country which has come out or rejected the proposals, they can only apply after 18 months. Now this is also relaxed, keeping in mind that India might very soon reconsider its stance on staying away from RCEP, and India might consider joining RCEP. That's why this 18-month cooling period was also kept aside for India's sake. एंड कल का आर्टिकल में भी हम लोग देखे थे, जब आरसीईपी का इनाग्रेशन हो रहा था तब उसका ऑफिशियल्स ने ये भी कहा था कि इफ इंडिया वांट्स टू जॉइन, इंडिया शुड राइट इन गिव इट्स कंसेंट इन राइटिंग, एंड वी आर रेडी टू एक्सेप्ट द initial negotiations with India regarding RCEP. Now, what would be the apt conclusion for this? India should review its position. What are the benefits of joining RCEP, and what are the problems which India might face if we join RCEP? The biggest problem will be from China. With China, we have border issues. Along with border issues, we also have trade deficit. Then we are going towards Atmanirbhar. Now, Atmanirbhar is one type of protectionist or protectionism for our own businesses and our own entities. So, the biggest problem with China are all these things, and also dumping of goods by China. China dumps its goods into other countries, weakening their own markets. So, all these problems, how we should tackle these things and embrace openness rather than protectionism. Instead of closing our fist in the name of protectionism, we should think how we can expand, how we can embrace the openness and review our own position in this particular incident. So, this is all about the threat or treat article of your editorial of Hindu. So let's quickly move towards the next editorial. The next editorial says, needed a policy framework in step with technology. टेक्नोलॉजी को इस्तेमाल करने के लिए एक सही तरह का पॉलिसी फ्रेमवर्क चाहिए. दैट इज द मेन थीम ऑफ दिस पर्टिकुलर editorial. This article is also a very important article in terms of the policy framework about the importance of technology or the growing role of new technologies in various sectors, and how there is the need for a proper policy to cater the needs of the modern technology. So, the beginning of the article itself, the author says the traditional boundaries between goods and services have blurred. जो पहले ऐसा होता था कि ये जो बाउंड्रीज बनते थे गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज के बीच में, यानी कि ये ऑटोमोबाइल है, ये इलेक्ट्रॉनिक है, ये गारमेंट सेक्टर है, ये कुछ अलग सा एक और सेक्टर है, ऐसे कई सारे चीजें होते थे। लेकिन यहाँ पे एक आज की डेट में ऐसा हो रहा है कि देर आर इलेक्ट्रॉनिक्स इन ऑटोमोबाइल्स एंड there are lot of other departments or other sectors which are interdependent on each other and they are directly working together. Now one big sector is having all the subunits of other sectors also along with it. Computing capabilities have surged faster than capabilities in traditional industries. इसका मतलब क्या है? अब सारे इंडस्ट्रीज में कंप्यूटर्स की इस्तेमाल काफी ज्यादा हो रही है and the computing capabilities have improved faster than the traditional industries. जितने भी ट्रेडिशनल इंडस्ट्रीज है, अब उन सारे इंडस्ट्रीज को यहाँ पे कंप्यूटिंग कैपेबिलिटीज जो है वो और भी ज्यादा इंप्रूव करना पड़ रहा है बिकॉज ऑफ द ऑब्वियस डेवलपमेंट्स इन साइंस एंड टेक्नोलॉजी. So in terms of science and technology, these traditional industries were still lagging behind because the computers have advanced a lot. These information based technologies, all the departments or all the computation technologies which derive the information and which are dependent on the information which they get from various sources have been widely adopted across a broad range of industries and products that traditionally would not have been perceived as electronic or software based. इसका मतलब क्या होता है दोस्तों? What do you mean by this actually? These all the information based technologies, which means simply your computer and IT industry. Your IT industry is completely adapted in all the industries, all the other manufacturing based industries, which, let us take for example, some 70 to 80 years ago or in the pre-independence era, the computers is seen as a separate industry and all these manufacturing units are seen as separate industry. Now what happened today, both are working together, both are intermingling, and that is something which has got a tremendous significance, and information is the new currency powering the economies. Today information is more important than each and everything. Information is one which is vital in running the entire world, and that's why the biggest challenges here are data privacy, which is not related to this particular topic but regarding information. Why it is the new currency? Because data privacy is something which is a worry for all the countries across the globe. That itself signifies why the information is so vital in each and every country. One bit of information can make or break the relation between two nations, two continents, or even entire world. उतना important और उतना महत्वपूर्ण है information. The expansion of computing power has driven the pace of information gathering and also analysis. जब कंप्यूटिंग पावर इंप्रूव हो गई है तो इंफॉर्मेशन गैदरिंग और इंफॉर्मेशन एनालिसिस, जिसको हम लोग क्या कहते हैं, डाटा एनालिसिस, टुडे वन ऑफ द मोस्ट ट्रेंडिंग एरियाज इन टर्म्स ऑफ योर आईटी एंड सॉफ्टवेयर इज डाटा एनालिसिस, जिसको हम लोग बिग डाटा एनालिटिक्स भी कहते हैं. This big data analytics is very 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 important in terms of the modern day industrial needs. The new currency derives processes and decision making across a wide array of products and services मेकिंग देम इवन मोर एफिशिएंट एंड वैल्यू एक्रेटिव टू कस्टमर्स। यानी कि अब ये इंफॉर्मेशन ड्रिवन प्रोसेसेस और इंफॉर्मेशन ड्रिवन एप्लीकेशंस जो है, ये सारे एप्लीकेशंस काफी सारे प्रोडक्ट्स और सर्विसेज में इस्तेमाल की जाती है, एंड इट मेक्स देम इवन मोर एफिशिएंट एंड आल्सो ए वैल्यू एसेटिव फॉर कस्टमर्स। यानी कि कस्टमर्स को भी ये वैल्यू फॉर मनी जैसा दिखाते हैं, एंड दे गिव ए वाइड रेंज ऑफ प्रोडक्ट्स एज वेल एज सर्विसेज टू द कस्टमर्स। देन let us take a very good example here. The author gives us the example of automobiles. Today in a modern automobile, more than 40% of its components are from इलेक्ट्रॉनिक बेस्ड प्रोडक्ट्स। जितने भी इलेक्ट्रॉनिक प्रोडक्ट्स है वहां से 40% की कंपोनेंट वैल्यू प्राप्त की जाती है। एंड ए मॉडर्न इलेक्ट्रिकल व्हीकल हैज क्लोज टू 100 मिलियन लाइंस ऑफ कोड। एक इलेक्ट्रिकल व्हीकल में 100 मिलियन लाइंस ऑफ कोड होती है, जो बोइंग 787 और क्रोम ब्राउजर की कोड से भी ज्यादा है। इवन इन योर क्रोम वेब ब्राउजर और योर बोइंग 787, which is the largest aircraft as on date, even these two have less code than one simple modern electric vehicle. So that is a very very big change in the amount of value addition from the intangible technology services as opposed to physical objects. Even in traditional goods is being transformed by information. इसका मतलब क्या है दोस्तों? ये जो टेक्नोलॉजी बेस्ड सर्विसेज है, इंटेंजिबल टेक्नोलॉजी सर्विसेज, लेट अस टेक फॉर एग्जांपल ए कार। आपको कार में सब कुछ ऑटोमेटिक चाहिए, you need automatic gear, and also you need the airbags which have to open automatically in the times of danger. Then you have automatic braking system, then you have all the front panel of electronics which shows each and every detail. It shows about your engine, it shows about your fuel, about your mileage, and there are lot of things which are shown in one particular car. So all these things completely come under your electronics, yes or no? Now when such a large chunk of electronic based products are being used in a single car, then you can understand the importance of this services, which once are seen as separate department or even a separate industry, has today become a intangible part of this electron your automobile industry. Now अगर आप कोई भी एक कन्वेंशनल मेटल बेस्ड इंडस्ट्रियल प्रोडक्ट को देखते हैं, इफ यू सी एनी मेटल बेस्ड इंडस्ट्रियल प्रोडक्ट्स, देन इंफॉर्मेशन एंड इलेक्ट्रॉनिक्स हैव बिकम ऑल परवेसिव। सारे जगह इलेक्ट्रॉनिक्स और इंफॉर्मेशन बेस्ड ऑब्जेक्ट्स ही आपको देखने के मिलते हैं, एंड वी सेट बाउंड्रीज टू कंट्रोल क्वालिटी और अपटाइम ऑफ द इक्विपमेंट इवन इन दोस मेटल बेस्ड इंडस्ट्रीज। अब हम लोगों को सबसे ज्यादा क्या दिखती है? हम लोगों को सबसे ज्यादा the equipment, everything is completely electronics based, which directly and indirectly quotes you the importance and the interdependence of various technologies, the increasing digitization and electronification of industrial activities. इसको हम लोग बेस्ट एग्जांपल क्या दे सकते हैं? रोबोटिक्स as well as automation. Your automation as well as robotics, both of these things are involved only in terms of your electronics। यानी कि रोबोटिक्स में और ऑटोमेशन में क्या इस्तेमाल की जाती है? कंप्यूटर एंड इलेक्ट्रॉनिक्स। दैट मीन्स योर डाटा एंड इंफॉर्मेशन इज टेकिंग ओवर each and every product, service, and it is also influencing the evolving skill sets। यानी कि अब जो इंडस्ट्री में नए स्किल्स क्या क्या चाहिए, all these skills are being affected by these two things, robotics as well as automation. So increasing digitization as well as electronification has pretty much increased the skill sets or the requirements of any and every industry. Now working in silos, what do you mean by silos in this context? Silos means as a single entity but not single or unique entity separated from others. So they work as a single entity which is separate from others. As governments have focused on improving the lives of the people, they have looked at economic development and industry as catalysts to progress. Economic development और एक तरह और दूसरी तरह establishment of industry as a catalyst. अब catalyst माने क्या है? What does a catalyst do? Catalyst speeds up the reaction. Catalyst does not perform the reaction, but it speeds up the reaction. So catalyst is something which increases the pace or increases the speed of reaction without actually participating. So the economic development and industry are two such catalysts for the progress. For overall progress ये दोनों काफी ज्यादा जरूरी है. And in order to address the needs of various stakeholders, governments often have tried to build specialized departments and designed policies that govern these areas. हर एक अलग अलग इंडस्ट्री को या अलग अलग सेक्टर के डिमांड्स को देखने के लिए गवर्नमेंट ने क्या किया था, स्पेशलाइज्ड डिपार्टमेंट्स शुरू की थी. These specialized departments designed policies that govern those areas. But what happened? The number of these departments grew and they have started to operate individually. But the situation demands an interdependence एंड एक कोऑपरेटिव वर्क, क्योंकि अभी सारे जो इंडस्ट्रीज है वो इंटरडिपेंडेंट है अलग अलग सेक्टर्स के बीच में, एंड इसलिए देयर शुड बी ए इंटरडिपेंडेंस एज वेल एज ए कोऑपरेशन बिटवीन डिफरेंट पॉलिसी मेकिंग डिपार्टमेंट्स. For most of the 20th century has been reasonably successful in driving economic development countries. So जितने भी countries जो 20th century में काफी ज्यादा डेवलप हुए थे in terms of their economic activity, the specific departments which are created for the sole purpose of designing policies of a particular area, they were very much successful. But in terms of 21st century, are they really significant and relevant is the question. But the recent developments in technology has, however, blurred the standard boundaries which dictate the policy framework in most of the governments. जितने भी गवर्नमेंट्स है वहां पे जो बाउंड्रीज होते हैं, यानी कि यहां तक मेरे डिपार्टमेंट है, आगे आपका डिपार्टमेंट है, ऐसे जितने भी बाउंड्रीज है वो सारे बाउंड्रीज अब क्या हो चुका है, कंप्लीटली ब्लर हो चुका है, यानी कि वो कंप्लीटली क्लोज हो चुका है. नाउ you should need such policy framework which has multiple departments working together. Best example is in India. The industrial promotion policies look at encouraging capital formation from a manufacturing perspective. तो हमारा इंडस्ट्रियल प्रमोशन पॉलिसीज है जिसके लिए हम लोगों के पास एक डिपार्टमेंट है, DIPP, डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ इंडस्ट्रियल पॉलिसी एंड प्रमोशन. डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ इंडस्ट्रियल पॉलिसी एंड प्रमोशन. इस डिपार्टमेंट का काम क्या है दोस्तों? दिस डिपार्टमेंट मेजरली फोकस द कैपिटल फॉर्मेशन फ्रॉम ए मैन्युफैक्चरिंग पर्सपेक्टिव. Now, as technology is driving an increasing share of the total value addition coming from its digitization and data analytics, there needs to be a way of encouraging capital formation by way of intangibles in traditionally tangible industries. इसका मतलब क्या है? अब तक हम लोग क्या कर रहे हैं, सिर्फ एक मैन्युफैक्चरिंग पर्सपेक्टिव में ही सारे कैपिटल फॉर्मेशन को एंकरेज कर रहे हैं. बट हाउ वी शुड डू दिस? वी शुड encourage the capital formation in intangibles like IT and electronics. In terms of IT and electronics, we have to increase more and more investment which has its application in traditionally tangible industries like automobiles. तो जितने भी इंडस्ट्रीज जो कई सारे साल पहले पूरे तरह से इलेक्ट्रॉनिक्स या डिजिटाइजेशन से इंडिपेंडेंट है, अब वो कंप्लीटली डिपेंडेंट हो गए हैं Now it is the part of the DIPP and other organizations to promote investments in such R&D things which has implications on other sectors. Again, the standard example taken by the author is the automobile industry. In automobile industries, the policies are governed by heavy industries and surface transport ministers res- रेस्पेक्टिवली, यानी कि जो हेवी इंडस्ट्रीज का मंत्रालय होता है उसके साथ अ, जिसको हम लोग कहते हैं सरफेस ट्रांसपोर्ट मिनिस्ट्री, इन दोनों मिनिस्ट्री के द्वारा यहाँ पे पॉलिसीज की जाती है. बट द इलेक्ट्रॉनिफिकेशन एज वेल एज द डिजिटाइजेशन, the electronification as well as the digitization of automobiles, this does not come under the industrial policies of electronics and information technology ministry. यहाँ पे जितने भी इलेक्ट्रॉनिक्स इस्तेमाल की जाती है वो इंडस्ट्रियल पॉलिसीज जो इन इलेक्ट्रॉनिक्स एंड आईटी मिनिस्ट्री के द्वारा इस्तेमाल किया जाता है या प्रयोग किया जाता है उसके अंदर ये नहीं आता है. Then which ministry does it take? That is the bigger question. The departmentalization of policies is also facing a challenge because of the technology that often blurs the boundaries served by different policies. इसका मतलब क्या है दोस्तों? Because of the challenge from the technological advancements today, from the technological advancements, the boundaries between various policies have been now blurred, and this is the important thing that we need to come out of this blur, and we need to find out what are the important boundaries or what are the departments which have to work together in order to bring a new policy. Now they need to view it holistically, they need to have a holistic view on policies for economic development as well as technology, because technology is becoming a significant enabler in most of the industries. कई सारे इंडस्ट्रीज में सिर्फ टेक्नोलॉजी एक गेम चेंजर के रूप में काम कर रही है, एंड यू शुड बी वेरी मच कीपिंग इन दिस पॉइंट इन योर माइंड व्हेन यू आर फ्रेमिंग ए पॉलिसी. जब आप एक पॉलिसी की फ्रेमवर्क बना रहे हो तब आप इन सारे चीजों को अपने दिमाग में रखिए कि द इकोनॉमिक डेवलपमेंट बिकॉज ऑफ द टेक्नोलॉजी इज बिकमिंग ए वेरी बिग पॉइंट ऑफ concern, and you should address that when you are framing some new policies. Now what is the way ahead? A change in policy framework regarding the economic development. A change in policy framework regarding the economic development which enables various ministries to work together, जिसमें कई सारे मिनिस्ट्रीज को मिलजुल के काम करने की एक मौका जब मिलता है एक पॉलिसी फ्रेमवर्क में, दैट इज द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग विच शुड बी डन हियर. A sufficiently empowered policy clearing cell. There should be something called a policy clearing cell which can ensure a holistic view on a policy across the departments of the government and also at the center and state. सेंटर का पॉलिसी अलग सा होता है, स्टेट्स का पॉलिसी अलग सा होता है, इसलिए एक पॉलिसी क्लियरिंग सेल को हम लोग बनाना चाहिए. उसको हम लोग इतना पावर देना चाहिए कि सारे डिपार्टमेंट के बीच कोऑर्डिनेशन जो है, और who else should be the stakeholders of a particular policy making, all these things should be reported by this policy clearing cell. And also in terms of attracting investments, policies have always been driven by subsidies as well as incentives, but in the recent competitive scenario these are becoming hygiene factors. यानी कि ये जो subsidies और incentives है, the subsidies and incentives now they have become the hygiene factors. That means they have become naturally important factors, but subsidies and incentives should also be given properly, that all the stakeholders involved in a particular industry or a particular sector, maybe other departments which are involved there, should also be involved in the policy making of the promotion so that the incentive will be distributed across the components or across the sectors in an equitable manner. So there is something called equitable distribution, which is very much important. Now, taking an aggregate view, now it is very important to develop a nourishing ecosystem for industry. इस ecosystem of industry में क्या होना चाहिए? Hard infrastructure as well as soft infrastructure. Now what do you mean by this soft infrastructure? Soft infrastructure means education, skill development, technical institutions, laboratories and testing centers, all these have to be started. आप मान के चलिए एक तरह का लैब एक एरिया में शुरू की गई थी, उसके बाजू में उसके नजदीक में कई सारे ऐसे इंडस्ट्रीज डेवलप कर सकते हैं जो इस टेस्ट रिजल्ट्स के आधार पर रहते हैं. दैट इज something which we call it as interdependent industries can be established in such places. The creation of clusters of companies, this is something which is a very good idea. Remember friends, the clusters of companies in adjacent but complementary areas could constitute such an ecosystem that encourages multi and cross disciplinary learning and spur innovation and economic development. The best example for this is SEZ. In मेरी स्पेशल इकोनॉमिक जोन्स क्या हो रहा है, यहाँ पे रॉ मटेरियल बेस्ड इंडस्ट्री एक होता है, उस रॉ मटेरियल में से उसको इंटरमीडिएट प्रोडक्ट बनाने वाला इंडस्ट्री एक होता है, उस इंटरमीडिएट प्रोडक्ट को फाइनल प्रोडक्ट बनाने की एक और इंडस्ट्री होता है. जस्ट फॉर एग्जांपल टेक एन एग्जांपल ऑफ बिस्किट्स. नाउ लेट अस से इन वन पर्टिकुलर says there is a big mill which converts wheat into flour. Then there is another industry which does manufacture biscuits, and there is another industry which takes care of the transport. Agar everything is available at only one particular place, then what happens? It creates an ecosystem that the entire production can be done in a very nearer area, which reduce a lot of time and effort for both the parties. So that is the creation of clusters is also very important. Now this type of ecosphere can also attract investment as well as capital formation because all the facilities are available at a single stop. So simply we have to create one stop destinations for investments. And the larger issue of a shift of value between manufacturing and services is when the technology changes. When there is a new standards of technology introduced, there should be proper governing rules in terms of implementation and utilization of these technologies, as well as the research and development of these technologies. So that's why the policy have to promote and give incentives for mainly the manufacturing sector, and even the share of the intangibles in the manufacturing sector, maybe the software, maybe the R&D, or even the servicing of products. The servicing of products of a manufacturing company is also considered under services sector, which is also an intangible part of any company. The maintenance, the R&D, R&D is must for every company because that is something which keeps each and every company up to date and also helps the companies to come up with new technologies in the market, which they might be the pioneers in their respective fields. So that's why we cannot ignore the computerization or the digitalization of any sector and the impact it creates. So these things have also are also should be covered in the industrial policies. It is also important to include these to encourage innovation and also technological development. Innovation और technological development को काफी ज्यादा improve करने के लिए भी ये सारे चीजें जो है वो काफी ज्यादा important है. Then in terms of evolving the policy framework, it is very important that there is close cooperation and alignment between the centers and states so that the effective implementation is done. And some of these thoughts could help us navigate through an ecosystem that is changing with technology. अब तक हम लोग जितने भी एग्जाम्पल्स के बारे में बात की थी, द इंटरडिपेंडेंस ऑफ द सेक्टर्स और द इंडस्ट्रीज दैट विल एनेबल अस टू नेविगेट थ्रू एन इकोसिस्टम विच इज चेंजिंग विद द टेक्नोलॉजी। टेक्नोलॉजी के हिसाब से जो नए नए इकोसिस्टम्स बन रहे हैं, उसके लिए हम लोग अपना पॉलिसी फ्रेमवर्क जो है उसको हम लोग चेंज करना पड़ेगा, उसको हम लोग अपडेट करना पड़ेगा। सो दैट इज अबाउट द नीड ऑफ ए पॉलिसी फ्रेमवर्क इन स्टेप विथ टेक्नोलॉजी वाला आर्टिकल। इसके बाद अगला जो आर्टिकल है वो है आंध्र प्रदेश के कैपिटल कॉनड्रम्स के बारे में है। नाउ बिफोर स्टार्टिंग दिस आर्टिकल आई विल क्विकली गिव यू ए शॉर्ट इंट्रो अबाउट दिस Andhra Pradesh capital issue. Initially, Amaravati was declared as the capital of the new Andhra Pradesh formed because Hyderabad was completely given to Telangana. Now, after the recent elections in 2019, the previous government was replaced by a new government, and the new government now doesn't want Amaravati to continue as a capital, and it has brought a policy of three new capitals for the state. But what are the issues with the new three capitals? Has ever anyone followed such an ideology? What were the results? ये सारे चीजों के बारे में काफी ज्यादा एनालिसिस इस आर्टिकल में हम लोगों को देखना मिलेगा। Now, Andhra Pradesh and its capital conundrums. Will the designated three capitals for the state of Andhra Pradesh, will it promote the distributed development? जिसको distribution of development should not be confined in one particular area, but it should be distributed across the areas is the motive behind establishing three capitals. But really, does establishing three capitals itself ensure that there is a distributed development across the areas? Let us see what the author wants to convey us about the very same thing. आंध्र प्रदेश की गवर्नमेंट से ये जो डिसीजन ली गई थी कि अब हम लोग एक के बदले में तीन कैपिटल्स रखेंगे, क्या ये सही तरह से डिस्ट्रीब्यूटेड डेवलपमेंट जो उनका मोटो कहा गया है उसके लिए प्रभावित रहेगा या नहीं रहेगा, या क्या चीजें कंसर्न की बातें क्या है, इन सारे चीजों के बारे में अब हम लोग हमारा डिस्कशन जो है वो कंटिन्यू करेंगे। नाउ आंध्र प्रदेश इज विटनेसिंग ए गेम ऑफ थ्रोन्स लाइक ग्रिटी पॉलिटिक्स इन्वॉल्विंग द कैपिटल सिटीज। कैपिटल सिटीज को लेके यहाँ पे काफी ज्यादा पॉलिटिकल हमला हो रहा है, पॉलिटिकल अटैक हो रहा है। इन सारे चीजों की वजह क्या है, एंड व्हाट वाज द पॉलिटिकल मोटो बिहाइंड ऑल दीज थिंग्स, दैट इज important. The Andhra Pradesh government has proposed a three capital plan in its previous session of the assembly. Now, the Andhra Pradesh government it wants a three capital plan where it wants three new capitals in which Visakhapatnam will be the executive capital, Amaravati will be the legislative capital, and Kurnool will be the judicial capital. So, to implement this, the government has brought a bill called Andhra Pradesh Decentralization and Inclusive Development of All Regions Bill. So, the bill aims at decentralization, inclusive development of all the regions, and the matter has become contentious along the political party lines, and the bill is facing myriad legal and procedural challenges. यानी कि ये जो बिल पास किया गया था गवर्नमेंट के द्वारा, इसमें कई सारे ऐसे प्रोविजंस है जो पॉलिटिकली मोटिवेटेड है, एंड द बिल इज आल्सो फेसिंग लीगल एज वेल एज प्रोसीजरल चैलेंजेस। यानी कि हर एक स्टेप में क्या हो रहा है, कोई ना कोई जाके हाई कोर्ट या सुप्रीम कोर्ट में पिटिशंस डाल रहे हैं, और उसकी वजह से ये आगे नहीं बढ़ पा रही है। द प्रपोजल इज टू सेट to replace the ambitious plan of previous government of building Amaravati as a world class greenfield city। जो प्रीवियस गवर्नमेंट ने एक एम्बिशियस प्लान बनाए थे कि अमरावती को एक वर्ल्ड क्लास ग्रीनफील्ड सिटी के रूप में बनाने के लिए, लेकिन अब गवर्नमेंट क्या चाहती है, इंस्टेड ऑफ डेवलपिंग वन प्लेसेस नाउ दे वांट टू डेवलप थ्री प्लेसेस एज थ्री कैपिटल्स। हमारे देश में आप लोगों को मालूम है, आप कोई भी स्टेट को ले लो, वहां पे सिर्फ एक ही कैपिटल होता है, कुछ प्लेसेस ऐसे भी है जैसा पंजाब हरियाणा which share a common capital, but here in one state the state is talking about three capitals, which is something new in the history of India. और इसके बैकग्राउंड कुछ चीजें हम लोग एक बार देखेंगे. आफ्टर द स्टेट्स बाइफर्केशन इन 2014 में क्या हुई है? 2014 में तेलंगाना एंड आंध्रा गॉट सेपरेटेड इनटू two different states, and the capital of the erstwhile Andhra Pradesh, Hyderabad, remained with Telangana, and Andhra has no capital. So that's why the previous government, what they thought, they wanted to create a hype around a project called Amravati, and they wanted to create it as a world class greenfield city, and they have introduced a new model called land pooling model. ये जो land pooling है ये काफी ज्यादा important है दोस्तों. लैंड पूलिंग मॉडल. नो व्हाट इज दिस लैंड पूलिंग मॉडल? यू टेक लैंड फ्रॉम फार्मर्स जिसका वैल्यू होता है काफी लो, एंड यू रिटर्न डेवलप्ड लैंड विथ हाई वैल्यू. आप मान के चलिए आप लोग एक ऐसा एरिया में लैंड खरीदा है जहां पे हर एकड़ का जमीन आप मान के चलिए 1 करोड़ रुपया है. नाउ यू हैव डेवलप्ड दैट एरिया टू सच एन एक्सटेंट दैट ऑल द नाइबरिंग एरियाज नाउ दे आर सेलिंग एट ए प्राइस ऑफ 10 crore rupees per acre. रियल एस्टेट बूम. सो इन ए सिमिलर वे यहाँ पे लैंड पूलिंग में क्या होता है? पहले किसान अपनी जमीन गवर्नमेंट को दे देते हैं, एंड इन रिटर्न द गवर्नमेंट विल गिव दैट पर्टिकुलर labor or the agriculture farmer a piece of developed land which is far more in value, in monetary value, when compared to the land he gave to the government. So that is the plan of the previous government, but what happened in the later day is the point of discussion. अब इस थ्री कैपिटल की प्लान जो है उसके बैकग्राउंड का भी हम लोग थोड़ा बहुत जानना चाहिए. So it is similar to the lines of South Africa. South Africa में Pretoria, Johannesburg and Cape Town. These three are three capitals in South Africa, and South Africa has this three capital model, of course, which does not yield very good results in South Africa. South Africa में ये उतना ज्यादा बढ़िया रिजल्ट्स नहीं दी थी, लेकिन ये जो मॉडल है आंध्र प्रदेश जो फॉलो होने की सोच रही है, ये सारे जो मॉडल है वो साउथ अफ्रीका से ही इंस्पायर्ड है. एंड दिस मॉडल वाज एक्चुअली रिकमेंडेड बाय द केसी शिवरामकृष्णन कमिटी, जिसको हम लोग आगे केसीएस कमिटी के नाम से रिफर करेंगे. इस कमिटी ने नए कैपिटल के बारे में कुछ रिकमेंडेशंस भी दी थी, एंड इस रिकमेंडेशंस क्यों ऐसा दिया था केसीएस कमिटी ने? इसके लिए केसीएस कमिटी का जो रेगुलेशंस दिया गया है या उसको जो ऑर्डर्स दी गई है, यानी कि आप लोग इसी ब्रैकेट में, इसी सर्किल में आपको एक रिपोर्ट देना चाहिए, वो सारे रिस्ट्रिक्शंस भी हम लोग एक बार देखना चाहिए. द कमिटी वाज कॉन्स्टिट्यूटेड इन द आफ्टरमैथ ऑफ बाइफरिकेशन ड्रिवन बाय the agitation of legitimized and politicized by the regional imbalances in development. क्योंकि आंध्रा में हम लोगों को अभी तीन तरह के रीजन्स होते हैं. एक होता है नॉर्थर्न कोस्टल एरिया, वन सेंट्रल कोस्टल एरिया, एंड द अदर इज रायलसीमा. ये जो रायलसीमा और नॉर्थर्न कोस्टल एरियाज है, ये दोनों एरियाज काफी ज्यादा बैकवर्ड जाना जाता है when compared to the central coastal regions. The central coastal regions, they are in the very rich, fertile delta of the Krishna and Godavari basin, and they have abundant rainfall as well as water from the Krishna and Godavari rivers. But the northern coastal Andhra as well as Rayalaseema, they are having lot of problems in terms of agriculture as well as development. So that's why there were lot of regional imbalances in the state. And in order to analyze those regional imbalances and give a proper report, the KCS committee was formed. But the terms of reference of this committee, they stress the overall development of backward regions of the state. पूरे राष्ट्र के जितने भी बैकवर्ड एरियाज है, उन सारे बैकवर्ड एरियाज में काम करने के लिए इस कंपनी का टर्म्स ऑफ रेफरेंस particularly mention करता है. And they refer to the existing uneven development, the backward northern coastal Andhra as well as the Rayalaseema district when compared to the central coastal districts. जैसे कि मैंने अभी आपको कहा था, the central coastal districts where the new capital Amravati is situated is far more developed than the northern coastal districts where Visakhapatnam is located and the Rayalaseema district in which your Kurnool is located. And the TOR or the terms of reference also stresses least distribution or least disturbance of agricultural lands because अमरावती जो है उसमें से 90% ऑफ द लैंड जो है वो एग्रीकल्चरल लैंड है. सो दैट्स वाई इन ऑर्डर टू काउंटर दैट द committee was given a strict terms of reference that the minimal use of agricultural land and the least disturbance towards agricultural land has to be kept in mind. The decentralized development has become a fate accompli यानी कि इसका मतलब क्या है, a term that is generally used for a generic reference. So it has become a tool for the committee to recommend, especially in the background of coruscating subnationalism. हमारे देश में ये एक और प्रॉब्लम है, regionalism. Within the state and within the region there is again sub-regionalism. So that is another big cause of concern, and that was very highly running. That was very much predominantly existed at that particular point of time. So that's why they have recommended three capitals in three regions. The government's three capital formula, calling them the judicial, the legislative, as well as the executive capitals, appeared to be an imported idea. It was in already, जैसे कि मैंने आपको अभी कहा था, it was inspired from the South African example, but the KCS committee has stressed distributed development to decentralized governance. हम लोग एक के बदले में अब 3 प्लेसेस में सेंट्रलाइज कर रहे हैं, लेकिन केसीएस कमिटी का जो कहना है वो ये है कि एक डिसेंट्रलाइज्ड गवर्नेंस होना चाहिए. Then the essence of the distributed development concept is to make deliberate efforts to spatially deconcentrate the executive power driven by region specific economic activities. अगर किसी एक रीजन में एक तरह की economic activity काफी ज्यादा होती है, उस रीजन में वहां पे उस रीजन में उस economic activity के संबंधित जो मंत्रालय होता है उसको वहां पे लगाना चाहिए. द बेस्ट एग्जाम्पल इज वाइजैग. Visakhapatnam is also called as the city of destiny and also called as Vizag. So for Vizag, the committee have recommended the government offices which are related to economic and potential, such as the ports related offices, shipping and fisheries related offices, as well as the industry related offices, because Visakhapatnam is the largest industrial city of Andhra Pradesh state. So that's why it also has a Visakhapatnam port, which is one of the major ports of India. Then there is a shipping harbor, which is a natural harbor. Also, there are a lot of industries like thermal power plant, Visakhapatnam steel plant, and HPCL refinery. ऐसे कई सारे organizations है, and it is also the base of the Eastern Naval Command. So इतने सारे organizations जब है तो industry regulatory body भी यहीं पे बनना चाहिए. And the panel also recommended developing the Visakhapatnam region as a high tech zone. एक high tech zone की तरह इसको develop करने की recommendation भी दी है. And in a similar way it recommended for the Rayalaseema arc and also the Hyderabad Bangalore highway to be developed. Then Kalahasti spine which has the Nadikudi Srikalahasti railway line. ये जो रेलवे लाइन है इसकी वजह से एक नया एरिया डेवलप की जा सकती है. इतने सारे रिकमेंडेशंस दी गई है शिवरामकृष्णन कमेटी और केएससी, लेकिन क्या ये हो पाया है? देन द आंसर इज अ बिग नो. नाउ व्हाट आर द स्पेशल चैलेंजेस which are involved in this multi capital plan? So the first one is distributed development must not be lost in executing it. हम लोग अब क्या कर रहे हैं? We are simply moving the secretariat to the executive capital and we are moving the high court. Now, what development do we really get if we move the secretariat and high court? अगर आप लोग हाई कोर्ट को दूसरे जगह पे रखते हो तो नया डेवलपमेंट क्या आएगा उस हाई कोर्ट की वजह से? या आप ये मान के चलिए अगर सेक्रेटेरिएट किसी दूसरे जगह पे लगा दिया तो सारे एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन जो है अब अमरावती जैसी जो हो रही है वो सारे चीज जो है वो विशाखापट्टनम में चला जाएगा। फिर डिसेंट्रलाइजेशन की बात कहाँ से आ रही है? So how can you justify the decentralization in this particular context is the bigger question. Then there are lot of other issues which also help us in analyzing the scenario. जो साउथ अफ्रीकन मॉडल इन लोगों ने इस्तेमाल की थी, even in the South African country there are lot of regional sentiments or regional issues which does not provide confidence on other areas. But Andhra Pradesh has a clean slate because we need not change any existing capital because there is no capital as such. जैसे कि आंध्र प्रदेश स्टेट को कोई कैपिटल नहीं है, अब ये लोग एक क्लीन स्लेट जैसा है, इसको जहां मर्जी चाहे वहां पे ये लोग कैपिटल बना सकते हैं। द सक्सेस ऑफ डिस्ट्रीब्यूटेड डेवलपमेंट बस डिपेंड्स ऑन ए वेल डेवलप्ड इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चरल नेटवर्क विच कनेक्ट्स द ग्रोथ सिटीज। जितने भी सिटीज यहाँ पे ग्रो हो रही है इन सारे सिटीज के बीच में जो लिंक बनाते हैं हम लोग, उस लिंक से ही यहाँ पे डिस्ट्रीब्यूटेड डेवलपमेंट जो है वो शुरू हो जाती है। बट आंध्र प्रदेश प्रैक्टिकली lacks these linkages and the state soon focuses on these preconditions so that it has to use these potentials to a next level. Examples like Chennai Visakhapatnam Industrial Corridor, two big cities in the eastern coast. अगर एक इंडस्ट्रियल कॉरिडोर इन दोनों स्टेट्स के बीच या इन दोनों सिटीज के बीच अगर एस्टेब्लिश किया जाएगा, so the entire कोरमा आंध्रा कोस्ट, the entire Andhra coast will have a lot of benefit. So, in order to benefit Andhra coast, there can be a Chennai Visakhapatnam industrial corridor which can be compared to Sierra Nevada. The Nevada road जो है in United States of America, this can be compared to that if we have a proper industrial corridor between Visakhapatnam and Chennai. And the infrastructure development within the cities is another important point along with the growth centers which is recommended by the Shivaramakrishnan committee. Then Visakhapatnam as executive capital will experience much stress because already the city is developed, and if there is more and more population adding because of it being declared as an executive capital, then it will have to undergo lot of additional stress, but the infrastructural development will not go in such a pace as the population increases. पॉपुलेशन ऑल ऑफ ए सडन इंक्रीज हो जाती है, अगर कहीं पे काम नया शुरू हो रहा है तो कई सारे फैमिलीज आ जाते हैं, लेकिन जो बाकी एरियाज होते हैं वो और भी ज्यादा कंजेस्टेड हो जाते हैं बिकॉज ऑफ दिस एडिशन ऑफ एक्स्ट्रा पॉपुलेशन. सो दैट्स व्हाई देयर शुड बी अ लॉजिस्टिकल as well as infrastructural development needed in order to address such issues. The basis cannot be just the availability of land and build up area, but also the ability to cope up such intense development. Though Visakhapatnam had extensive, excellent natural advantages, still it doesn't have proper infrastructure. अगर आपको एग्जाम्पल चाहिए तो एक चीज है जिसको BRTS कहते हैं. दिस वॉज वेरी मच सक्सेसफुल इन Ahmedabad, which was introduced by our Prime Minister when he was Chief Minister. But the same thing failed in Visakhapatnam, which is a lesson to be kept in mind when we are talking about the decentralized development. So it is very much necessary to be conscious of the dynamics of these plans because the weak institutions to regulate growth might also hamper completely the other institutions. So unbridled real estate interests can co-opt local state institutions and sabotage the environmental interests. अगर रियल एस्टेट लोगों के हाथ में ये सारे जो चीज अगर आ गई है तो इसका मतलब ये हो सकता है कि जो एनवायरनमेंट के लिए इंपॉर्टेंट है वो सारे चीजें अब क्या हो सकती है, स्टेट लेवल परमिशन उसको मिल सकती है, इग्नोरिंग द एनवायरमेंटल कंडीशंस बिकॉज ऑफ द एक्सेसिव रियल एस्टेट इन्वॉल्वमेंट. So that's why the KC committee also warns about the environmental impact of विशाखापट्टनम बिकॉज ऑफ दिस इंटेंसिफिकेशन एंड डेंसिफिकेशन ऑफ सिटीज। इसका मतलब क्या होता है, उसी सिटी में और भी ज्यादा लोग को लेके आके बिकॉज ऑफ शिफ्टिंग द कैपिटल यू आर इंक्रीजिंग द स्ट्रेस ऑन द सिटी एंड particularly in Visakhapatnam recently there is a very big LG polymers gas leak which shook the entire country. So in such vulnerable state what we should do is the bigger cause of concern. Now there is a ongoing master plan and strategic plan for the Visakhapatnam metropolitan region, but this should be seen as an opportunity to address all the challenges and ad hocism and casual approach. Ad hocism money temporary approach as well as not taking it very seriously can undo its future potential. इसका मतलब क्या है, it can severely take a negative effect on the future potential of the city. So finally it is the Andhra Pradesh Decentralization and Inclusive Development of All Region Bill 2020 within its details offers a hope in its broad contours of pursuing inclusive development through zonal planning as well as development boards. Zonal planning और development boards को इस्तेमाल करके एक ब्रॉड बेसिस पे डिसेंट्रलाइज्ड डेवलपमेंट के लिए प्रॉमिस करती है ये बिल। लेकिन क्या ये प्रपोज्ड 3 कैपिटल प्लान जो क्लेम किया गया था वो डिसेंट्रलाइज्ड ग्रोथ प्रोड्यूस कर सकती है क्या? And also will it ensure that it achieves the primary goal of decentralized development irrespective of how the multi capital plan plays out? आप ये मान के चलिए अगर मल्टी कैपिटल प्लान फेल भी हो and if there is a proper decentralized development then it is a big success, but if you are unable to make both the success then it will remain as a failure venture in the entire history of this Andhra Pradesh capital. So that is all about the Andhra Pradesh capital conundrums wala article. So that's all for today. See you in tomorrow's analysis. Thank you and Jai Hind.